Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Rotary Club of Gainesville Tuesday meeting at the Cade Museum. Please silence your cell phones, and if you're watching on YouTube, please register your participation by sending an email to info@rotarygainesville.org. Up first to lead us in song and pledge, Pete Enwall.
And happy Thanksgiving to everybody. So now I want to share with you that I looked for a joke, Thanksgiving joke, turkey joke, and there just aren't any out there that measure up to my standards. So how many people have heard of Gamble Rogers? Gamble Rogers, okay, all right. Well, for those of you that haven't, Gamble Rogers was a troubadour that roamed North Florida and other places, entertaining us with song and stories, and we just loved him. And the Bible says that no man, anybody that gives their life for somebody else is a real hero. And Gamble jumped into, he was at the beach and he jumped into the sea to save somebody that was caught in the riptide, lost his own life. And so we honor Gamble every year. Gamble Rogers Folk Festival over at St. Augustine is a big deal, and there's several buildings named after Gamble because he loved St. Augustine. So anyway, to commemorate Gamble, this is the story of the great Micanopy Turkey Massacre. Now, if you go down Wakahuta Road in Micanopy, you come to the Micanopy Turkey Farm. Now, not too much exciting ever happened at the old turkey farm. I guess the most exciting thing that ever happened involved an ex-high school classmate of mine named Hilo Poindexter, who pulled up in front of the turkey pens on the eve of Thanksgiving, leaned out of his rump-spun Henry J. automobile, threw 3 authoritative toots on a tin-plated police whistle, causing the somnolent and semi-comatose birds to arouse themselves and poke their heads up periscope-wise in order to ascertain the source of the disturbance. Whereupon our young pilgrim leaned out of his rusted chariot with an unplugged J.C. Higgins 10-gauge goose gun with which he slew 497 birds. This came to be known by the chroniclers of Micanopy as the Great Micanopy Turkey Massacre of 1983. I am happy to report that our young pilgrim saw the error of his ways, and he is now the regional director of the ASPCA. Would you join me in singing "My Country 'Tis of Thee"? My country 'tis of thee, sweet land of liberty, of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrim's pride, from every mountainside, let freedom ring. Join me in pledging allegiance to our flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Pete. Lori Vidal will lead us in our invocation.
Thank you. Hey, the turkey is coming. I cannot wait. But let's have a word of prayer. Let us offer thanks for our food today and blessings for one another. May we, as a Rotary, be a source of hope for those in need, and may we provide contentment for those who are lonely. Let us be thankful for our opportunity to serve Rotary. May feelings of love, kindness, and a well-directed yet gentle spirit always be reflected in our actions. And so we give thanks to God and praise his name, for the Lord is good, and his love endures forever. In the spirit of thanksgiving, we pray. Amen.
Thank you. We invite our guests and traveling Rotarians to remain standing so we can get you introduced to the club. Yeah.
Testing 1, 2.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Today I have my daughters River and Esme Carter joining me.
Hey Rotarians, Ryan Kern here. I've got several special guests today. Joining me again is our wonderful exchange student Celeste from Bolivia, my lovely wife Martha, and her mother Susan, who's visiting us from New York.
Davis Rembert and my brother-in-law. We think it's been 30 years he's been coming down Thanksgiving week, Sandy Creighton.
Thank you all for visiting today. To start off, we'll have an announcement about sustainable Cambodia. Susan Maston.
This time next week, we're all going to be together in this great experience for our auction. So that's next Tuesday, December 3rd. I want to tell you that beautiful support everyone has given us in connecting with ideas, in bringing gift baskets, in their services. Thank you all. We really have come together. I think you're going to be thrilled with the ideas and the auctions and the spirit in the room. So in order to help us get ready, we have another Sustainable Cambodia story. This is going to be from our friend and Rotarian Ryan Kern, whose family is here. You'll know Ryan. We've known Ryan for so many years. We've kind of been growing up together. And you may not know that in addition to going to Cambodia with us, with his wife Martha, and being sponsors of 2 young students in university, Ryan is our volunteer webmaster, and that is an incredible job. That's how the world finds sustainable Cambodia, and we find the people. So here's Ryan with a great story.
Thank you, Susan, and good afternoon, Rotarians. So last week you got to hear about Dana tell her experience in the safari trip and the cool things, the dinner she puts together with her family for the auction, and Michael talk about sponsoring. So I took a different tact, and I wanted to talk to you specifically about the Sustainable Cambodia trip. And as Susan said, I've had the pleasure of knowing Richard and Susan for years now, and though I cognitively understood the many cool things they did in Cambodia, it didn't really impact my soul in a truly deep and meaningful way until Martha and I finally stopped looking at the emails every year and said, you know what, life's never gonna slow down. We need to just pull the trigger and join them over there. And we finally did that in 2023. And seeing firsthand the impact that they have had, their team has had, and the impact this club has had with its dollars over there is truly remarkable, and it's really seeing it firsthand. So I wanted to take you through just a couple of slides of our experiences over there. So the beginning of the trip, if you don't know how it's structured, is you start in the capital city of Phnom Penh, and so there's a little bit, it's a chance to recover from the long travel over there. You get a chance to see the big city, get a little bit of cultural context for some of the terrible things the country has been through, but it's kind of a nice welcome to Cambodia. One of the great things about this trip that I didn't appreciate, because I was a pre-Rotarian at the time, is that it's an incredible opportunity for Rotary Fellowship. The group of 35 Rotarians from all over the world that we were with, incredible people, and you form such a bond with them going through all of these things together. So you have a couple of days in the capital city of Phnom Penh to get started before you really dive into what is the crux of the adventure, and that's in Pusat, in the rural village where a lot of their work is done, a lot of work schools. So here's Martha with one of the most adorable students and human beings I believe I've ever met. Us having lunch at one of the local restaurants every day with Rotarians as we went about our business. And then on the right, as part of a bicycle gift exchange, where Rotaries just kind of prompt of the moment decided to ask each other for money to buy a whole bunch of bicycles and give them to the kids while we were there. So all part of the fun things that you get to do and experience while you're out there in the community. Also in Pussat, I had a chance to go on a medical day, and I basically was riding around in the back of an old pickup truck with a couple of colleagues on the trip that were in medical-related professions, and we just visited villages that had a variety of medical things going on. The closest true medical care is all the way back in the capital city a couple hours away, so they don't have access to a lot of healthcare resources. And one of the other things you get to do out there is actually visit with the villages, both ones that have had no aid or no projects yet that are potentials for future projects, and then see some of the ones that have lavish gardens and latrines now that have been a benefit of the grants and the hard work of this club, and everything in between is very fun. Last but not least, there's a trip to Siam Reap where you finish. I did notice looking through all of our pictures that there is a lot of photos of Martha and I eating and drinking. I believe that to be a statistical anomaly. But sure enough, here's Martha and I enjoying a drink in Siam Reap. This is where Angkor Wat is. There's a lot of fellowship time on the bus riding around with Rotarians and seeing ancient temples. So you get a little bit of everything, but kind of the meat of the trip is really the core experience with the kids. And that's why we're doing the fundraiser and the auction, is so those dollars are put to good use. And so to close, I wanted to share with you a quick video. And this is one of the neatest moments of the entire trip that will leave an impact on your heart forever. When you first arrive at SC, the site of the primary school, the children all organize a greeting for you with song and dance, and they kind of come shower every Rotarians there with love and crafts they've made in school. And it's a pretty special thing. Great. Thank you, guys. Hope to see you all at the auction next week.
Good afternoon, everyone. Just a quick announcement about a fun and fellowship upcoming. If you're available on Saturday, December 7th, we're going to meet out at Dudley Farms. How many of you have been to Dudley Farms? So if you haven't, you're in for a treat. It's a historic state park that was a working farm, and back in the days, the cracker farmers here locally, and they'll have their annual cane boil. Again, it's on Saturday, December 7th. That'll be at 9 a.m. We're going to meet out there, and we'll be carpooling and such as people want to. And also, we'll plan on having lunch for those who can join us afterwards. So please mark your calendar. There'll be more announcements coming Saturday, December 7th, 9 a.m.
Afternoon, fellow Rotarians. Patrick Dodds with Bread of the Mighty Food Bank, here to announce that we are starting our Grateful Rotarian support of Bread of the Mighty. This will be our annual food and fun drive. Fund with a D, but it doesn't mean it doesn't have to be fun as well. If you guys check your bulletins that get emailed out, it has all the information on how to give. This year we've set our goal at $8,500. Last year we raised just over $8,000. And Bread of the Mighty has the ability, through our purchasing power and our donor partners, to turn that $8,500 into over 60,000 pounds of food, which will equal 50,000 meals for community members in need. And it's so important, especially this time of year. Obviously, during the holidays, a lot of people support Bread of the Mighty. One of the great things that Rotary does is it continues this on through the new year. So we'll be going through the second week of January, which is fantastic because it allows for that support to come in after the holidays have passed, when the need is still greatest for families who are struggling. So you all should have one of these food drive flyers on your table. You can scan the QR code. There's a special page that we have set up at breadofthemighty.org/Rotary. So all donations will be credited to the Rotary Fund Drive. And I've also included one of these annual impact cards so you guys can take a look at the impact that you'll have by donating to Bread of the Mighty. If you have any questions about that, obviously feel free to reach out to me or to Helen Gilstrom, who's helping to coordinate this. And as always, thank you all so much for your ongoing support of the food bank. Thanks, guys.
Hey, everybody. Good afternoon. I'm here to talk about Seafood Spectacular. We had a wonderful event last Thursday night. It was a beautiful night. Couldn't have had better weather. Lots of great food and fellowship. It was a wonderful time. We had close to 500 people attend, so it was a nice crowd, but it wasn't crazy. I think everybody had a good time. We had plenty of food, plenty of drink. Want to just give a shout out to the sponsors that helped. We had several sponsors we're going to give special thanks to. Naomi Williams, Ryan Thompson, Jason Shank, Linda Reinhardt, Helen Gilstrom, Barb Gamble, Hugh Eubank, Ed Ellett, Cabby Style with Lisa, Megan Olson, Matt Brady, Charles Allen, Marcia Eubank, Bree Guterman, Dana Miller, Community Hospice and Palliative Care, Waste Pro, Embers, Culvers, the Eubank family, Radiant Credit Union, and Associates Realty. Let's give them a great hand for helping sponsor the event. Of course, with any Rotary event, you know, there's a lot of behind the scenes that goes on, a lot of people that do a lot of things. You know who you are: Jason, Chris, Ryan, David, Bill, Jenny, Ed, Barb, Bradley, Matthew, Greg, Tony, Terry, Wilbur, Kirk, Parker, Randy. I could keep naming. We had so much support over the work days, on the day of the event, behind the scenes, cleanup. So it was a great thing. Thanks to Randy Canton for his delicious desserts. Thanks to Kirk Smith for organizing the food. Lee with Northwest Seafood, Hills Catering, Embers, Chef Pam, and the Eastside Culinary School. We had a great bar with wine run by Linda and her crew, Bree Guterman and Billy D'Annunzio, who are from Greater Gainesville Club. Also at the beer bar, we had John Barley and Tom Wisniewski from Greater Gainesville, so we had some help with other members from other clubs, which is really cool. Finally, organizer extraordinaire Wes Eubank, couldn't have done that without him. And finally, my partner in crime, Wilbur Holloway, right there. Thank you for everything. It's a great night.
Good afternoon, everybody. I mean, you can tell that I'm excited about the Gators winning, right? I mean, been a good couple of weeks, I would have to say. So let's not take Florida State for granted, but we should be able to take care of them. So on your tables, you see this form right here. You should grab this form right now. I'm looking at you all. Somebody grab a form, And this is your last day to go ahead and do nominations for both board members and for secretary. You'll find on the back of this form that if you've served on the board for the last 2 years, you're not eligible to be back on the board. So you'll see the members that are current board members and have been board members over the last 2 years. And the secretary must have served on the board within the last 5 years. So you'll see the members on the form back here on the back side of the form of who is eligible to be nominated for secretary. So please do your nominations. Thank you to those who have, and appreciate you all. We're going to have the election will be next week, so this is your final opportunity to do nominations. And so next meeting we will do the actual election. Thank you very much. Go Gators.
Thank you, everyone, for all those updates. And now I'm actually going to invite Jay back to the podium to introduce today's Craft Talk.
Can you tell I'm excited about the Gators? I'm more excited about introducing Eric, though. Eric Atria, when he walked in the door, not too long ago into the club, and I knew him because I'm a big music fan, and he's a local musician who played for a band called the Morning Bell and also for the Shoddy Beatles. Now, there should be an I in there. I'm not going to pronounce it that way because I may offend some of the people out here. But I didn't realize that in addition to being an incredible musician, he's also a criminal defense attorney, and most importantly, he's a husband and a father. And me and all of us should be thankful that he's recently adopted the title of a Rotarian, because I think he's already been an active member, he's already dug in, and I'm looking for great things to come from Eric. So with that, I'm going to introduce him, let him come up here and tell us all about himself.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for that introduction, Jay. I brought a few slides to highlight some of the things I want to talk to you about. So I'm Eric Atria, and I wanted to share with you the 5 rules that I try to live by. So the first rule is pursue your dreams. As Jay said, I wanted to be a musician when I was younger, so I started a band with my brother 25 years ago. My wife is also in it. We performed everywhere. We self-released. There we are at the Bo Diddley Plaza. We self-released 6 albums. We went on 8 U.S. tours. We had national press, international press, had our songs featured in movies, TV shows, but we didn't end up making any money. So there I am when I'm much younger, and there I am last year. I think I still look pretty good. Anyway, so that leads me to my second rule, which is have a backup plan. And so I went to law school, and I became a public defender. And that's what I've been doing for the last 20 years. I think when you're doing public defense, you're literally defending everybody here's constitutional rights on a daily basis. Third lesson, find opportunities at dead ends. So my wife and I were told we could not conceive a child, so we looked into adoption. We put our name on a list, and on October 21st of 2013, we got a phone call saying, be prepared to take a brand new baby girl home in 2 days. So we had 2 days notice that we were going to be parents, and there's Olivia. You can see the part of her head there. As I said a minute ago, we were told we could not conceive a child. Well, lo and behold, 2 years later, there's Daniel. So here we are today, and that's my third rule. Fourth rule, turn negatives into positives. So I'm squatting down. Someone's going to grab this. I've told you all of this story before. This is me being punched in the head by my client 2 years ago right across the street at the Alachua County Courthouse. He fractured my skull. I was out of work for 2 months. It was a very serious situation. But what happened as a result of it was I, pardon the pun, was knocked into the political arena. And the Florida legislature took notice of this experience and passed a bill extending protections to all defense attorneys statewide, increasing the penalties if a defendant chose to attack their own attorney. So I'm the face of that bill. I'm the reason it exists. Every lawyer in Florida from now on will be protected because of me. It's humbling and it's powerful that that happened. So there I am speaking in front of the House. There I am at the Senate. There I am being interviewed by the Florida channel. It was quite an experience and the experience of a lifetime. So I ended up finding lots of positivity and inspiration to do more and find greater things to do with my life as a result of my experience with the Florida legislature. And that brings me to my last rule, which I do not need to explain to any of you. Surround yourself with positivity and like-minded people, and opportunities will present themselves. And everybody here who's shared their stories over my last couple months here has inspired me to do more and be more. And I can't wait to see what we all do together in the future. Thank you.
Eric. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. And welcome to the Rotary Club of Gainesville.
Well, this is very nice. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And one final thing before we get to our speaker today, John Gregory.
This poem is called Thanks Gobble. Ryan's son watched Thompson quite near, stuffing the turkey up through the rear. He thought that was cool and asked with a droll, "Are you going to hang it next to the deer?" Craig and Matt were feeling quite perky. About Thanksgiving Day, they'd be murky. Carter showed his glimmer. "We had Grandma for dinner." "Really?" asked Brady. "We had turkey." At Thanksgiving, the food sits and beckons. Jason's weight will increase, I reckon. The weight that Shank ends aren't the minutes he spends. It's usually the result of the seconds. At Thanksgiving, a Seminole had a deal. But English he needed, that's what they'd feel. The prof gave a quiz. A sentence ends with, the Seminole simply said, an appeal. Happy Thanksgiving.
Thank you, John. And now please join me in welcoming our president, Ryan Thompson.
Good afternoon, Rotarians. Welcome, guests. Pleasure to be back. I apologize for missing last week. JT, thank you for covering. Sorry I missed Wilbur's heartfelt presentation to his father, Sam. I was serving our district. Past district governor, Rich Cooper, asked me to serve on the nomination committee for the next district governor. So I was over in St. Augustine, and I think we selected a very deserving candidate, Ed Lombard from the West Jacksonville Club. Certainly has a passion for Rotary and will serve our district dutifully in 2027 and 2028. Dwight and Wilbur, thank you, and to everybody else that participated in the seafood. I think it was wonderful. The food was delicious, and the cold weather came in just on time. A holiday party, December 17th. President-elect John Thomas will be hosting a holiday party in a couple weeks. On Friday, a handful of us went over to the SWAG Center, Southwest Advocacy Group, to help pack bags for Thanksgiving dinners for over 300 people. The bags included everything you can imagine for a wonderful home-cooked Thanksgiving dinner. It was really heartwarming and thankful for to be able to play the small role that we did in this meaningful project. On Saturday, I was over in Palatka helping support the Rotary Club of Palatka. The weather was beautiful. They raised over $18,000. It was a really great event. I just wanted to share some of the pictures and encourage anybody that's interested to attend next year. It was a really good event. It was their 5th annual beer festival, and it obviously on the river. Yeah, my little drinking partner there. I know, it was a sacrifice. It was a sacrifice. All right. Today's speaker is Katherine Sayler with Defenders of Wildlife. She started her career as a field technician with the gopher tortoise population at Camp Landing nearly 20 years ago. She earned a bachelor's degree in wildlife conservation and ecology and a master's in environmental education from the University of Florida. After teaching high school in academic research for Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission. She's in a new role at Defenders. She hopes to advocate for lasting science-based policies and enduring protections for Florida's most vulnerable wildlife. Today, she's here to speak on manatee movement in the cold, how wildlife adapts to human modifications to the environment. Welcome, Katherine.
Thank you so much. There's the beautiful presentation. I really appreciate the opportunity to come and speak with you folks today. Something that wasn't mentioned, I'm already inspired so much. In a previous life, I worked for Bread of the Mighty as a grant writer, trying to bring in funds for that organization, from foundations. So just a plug for Bread of the Mighty. It's really a wonderful organization. And what I didn't mention is that I have a PhD in veterinary medical sciences, and I see one of my mentors and a legend in the veterinary community, Dr. Paul Gibbs over here in the corner, who also worked on tick-borne diseases. So before I came to Defenders, really, I studied ticks and the environment and how parasites move from wildlife into people, sometimes with a domestic animal in the middle. So really a lot of white-tailed deer. I got that white-tailed deer taxidermy joke. That wasn't lost on me. But really worked on white-tailed deer for a really long time. And now in this role, what we do at Defenders is advocate for the most imperiled wildlife. So wildlife that are either considered on the population level, potentially going extinct from the state's perspective. So the state of Florida, Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, my previous employer, will list species as either highly imperiled or threatened. And then the ESA, the Endangered Species Act, gets into animals like these beautiful West Indian manatees. See if I can use a pointer here. I cannot. No pointer. But West Indian manatees were essentially almost hunted to extinction. There are some really close relatives up in the Bering Sea that were indeed hunted to extinction. ESA came online, Endangered Species Act. I try not to use acronyms. We're really guilty of it in the wildlife field, as in many other fields. Came online in 1972. This was actually one of the first species listed and has been greatly successful for things like the bald eagle, American alligator. Can you imagine? Now we have a very active harvest. White-tailed deer almost went extinct, and were repopulated using, so we actually have 3 subspecies in Florida because they were repopulated from other parts of the United States. So what the ESA, what the Endangered Species Act did, that was enacted by Nixon, really put some protections in place. And in particular for the manatee, there it is. They named, this is where manatees congregate, and that's what I'm going to talk about. So where do they live and what do they need? How has their habitat changed since 1972? If you look around Florida, there's been some changes since 1972. Waterways have changed, the landscape has changed, human population has changed, and manatee population has changed in a positive trend. So I'll talk a little bit about how their habitat has changed and then what we're doing, what our next steps are. So what do they need? What do they require? You've probably seen them in these beautiful warm springs. They really need water 68 degrees Fahrenheit or greater in the wintertime because as beautiful and rotund and round as they are, they don't have any blubber or the ability to thermoregulate. So they're not a whale. They don't have this ability to say nice and cozy in this warm winter jacket. They really need 68 degrees Fahrenheit or they get something called cold stunning disease, which inevitably typically kills them. And so 68, 72 springs, oh, so beautiful. Stays constant, warm flowing 72-degree weather all winter long, and they really need forage. So here, this is an image from Florida DEP of Volusia Blue Spring. They really need eelgrass, shoal grass, something in the water that they can eat. If that is not available, they'll eat red mangrove leaves, they'll eat algae, they'll find something else, but they eat 10% of their body weight in forage every day. So if you're a 150-pound adult that's eating 15 pounds of vegetables, can you imagine eating 15 pounds of vegetables every day? That would be challenging, but for manatees, they can do it and they do it well. And then they need places to rest. So here you see on the bank, again, this is Volusia Blue here on the right. Mothers typically have one baby. They feed them for 2 years. Usually the calves stay with their mothers for 2 years, and they need a place to have that baby, to rest, to feed, and have some respite away from where there's boats and folks moving on the water. So that's what they really require. That's the big deal, is warm water and available forage, as well as a place to rest. May I have the next slide, please? So where are they found in Florida? Well, during that cold period, they're here. They're really here. They don't really leave Florida. They'll find a warm water way, either coastal or inland, in those springs that I just showed you, someplace where it's at least 68 degrees Fahrenheit. Then in the summer, they'll kind of spread out all the way up, sometimes to Massachusetts, as far west as Texas, and then again return to Florida during the winter. So this map here on the right, that's synoptic winter sightings from the Florida Fish and Wildlife Conservation Commission, over 16,000 records since 1991. And each of those blue dots can represent up to 100 manatees. So it's not one dot, one manatee. They do stack up over time, and you really see they like coasts. You can see right around Palatka, they're on the Silver and Ocklawaha rivers, really close to us here in Gainesville, Silver Springs in Marion County, Crystal River on the west coast, Fanning Springs and Manatee Springs in Chiefland, if you've ever been there. Great place to collect ticks if you're ever looking for ticks. Fabulous. One of my old field sites, whenever we needed ticks, we would go to Manatee Springs, 2 hours, you got 1,000 ticks, not a problem. So be careful when you go off trail there. I should probably say that, permethrin, treat your clothes. But all of these locations are really important for them. And in the 1970s, it was simply, next slide, please, if you will, sir. They were simply looking at where they were congregating. They were not considering, under the Endangered Species Act, what they really need. So from the point of litigation for determining what can we petition the service to do next, we're really looking at the physical and biological features. That's food space cover based on the best scientific data that is the most contemporary and up to date. And that also considers economic and national security. So when you're figuring where manatees can be protected, you have to offset economic impacts, and you can't jeopardize military readiness and preparedness. So in places like NAS Jax, the naval station there may be manatees there, but it can't interfere with designating where they can and cannot be moved, or how the landscape can be altered if the military has operations. So that's outlined in the Endangered Species Act, Section 4. And so at Defenders, we take all of this into consider per the Endangered Species Act, as it is written and as it is enacted. Next slide, please. So in the 1970s, this is where we thought manatees were. It was basically, where do we go out in the water and see them congregating? So there was some scientific method being used, but we didn't have those flyover fixed-wing aircraft synoptic surveys that were happening every 3 years for 2 months of the year. You really see Southwest Florida in the Everglades, along the east coast of Florida, up into Cape Canaveral, Indian River Lagoon, and then the entire St. Johns River. So all the way up into Jacksonville, spilling out into the Atlantic Ocean. On September 24th, 2024, after we petitioned the service starting in 2008 and then repetitioned them in 2021 and said, hey, we still haven't designated habitat for manatees in order to enact their greatest protections and really understand where they are on the landscape, this is what the service proposed. So you can see significant areas have been added, including Manatee and Fanning Springs. Almost all of the St. Johns River has been lost or eliminated because of the lack of submerged aquatic vegetation or grasses there for them to eat. You can see the Rodman Pool and Dam is included. and portions of the Ocklawaha and Silver River really close to us, just 40 minutes plus away in Putnam County. So what we're working on right now is looking at the best scientific data to say, is this really the best we can do for manatees? Is this absolutely where they are? And is this future-proofed? And that becomes a challenge in Florida, and you'll see why here on the next slide, please. It's because there's a lot of changes that have happened to the landscape, as I mentioned, since 1970s. And if you'd hit the forward arrow for me, please, sir. There's been that huge loss of submerged aquatic vegetation, a lot of nutrient pollution, unfortunately. We're trying to really work hard on septic tank changes so that it's not going into the aquifer. So how I came to be at Rotary Club today is because I'm really interested in native plants and native landscapes. And I was at the Gainesville Garden Club Horticulture Expo because everything we put into the ground is in the aquifer. I grew up near Washington, D.C. It's not the case there. We don't have that really shallow karst, this limestone that all the water percolates down. Everything is connected, sheet flow into the Everglades. So what we put in our lawns, our nutrients, our fertilizer, how much watering we do, it all ends back up in the aquifer somewhere. It does not, some of it gets removed by wetlands, but those permitting processes have also changed. So as we've lost seagrass, we've gotten more algae, and that has led to the huge die-off of manatees you may have heard of in Indian River Lagoon that started in 2001, where we've lost probably 1,800 manatees in that population since winter. We've also gotten manatees used to power plants. So we built these huge coastal power plants that use something called once-through cooling. They pull in a ton of water, use that cool water to cool the steam from either coal, most of the nuclear has been decommissioned like Duke, but natural gas is very common to power our power plants. And once-through cooling is great, but it also has this warm water effluent, these industrial sites where there's thousands of manatees that congregate. So Cape Canaveral, Florida Power and Light, their plant, there can be up to 2,000 manatees hanging up there. And the moms teach their babies, hey, this is where it's at. This is where the warm water is going to be online all winter. You might want to come back here next year and perhaps the year after and the year after. So they've acclimated to that warm water and they've gotten really used to it. They use something called site fidelity. When you work on whitetail deer, they have these really tight home ranges, usually about a mile radius. And they also have site fidelity. Manatees do the same thing, and they teach their young, hey, come back here. Come to this power plant. It's warm, it's comfy, and it's always on. It never goes offline. Next arrow, please. We've also developed the coasts. So when we've developed coasts, you don't have to go far in Florida to see this. We've filled and kind of dredged, altered the coastline, altered and built canals, which affects where manatee goes. And I love going to the beach. I love staying in a nice condo and really enjoying everything that Florida has to offer. But this has changed habitat. So now what do we do? Where do we go from here? Next arrow, please. We've also built dams in Florida that we don't use for hydroelectric power, we don't use for drinking water, and we don't use for irrigation. Isn't that kind of interesting to think about? So a lot of times when we build large dams, it's because, we're running something off of it. We're watering our crops, or folks are drinking that water and have to go through some processing, just like our drinking water does here in Gainesville, in order to consume it. But we've built dams that have restricted manatee and access and flow, especially in north central Florida. And kind of nationally, there's been this big national fish passage movement. Some of the tribes out west have wanted their salmon runs to be restored, and there's been removal of dams, but not in Florida. The dams are still in place. So to bring us back to where these power plants are. They're really on the east coast of Florida, and then Tampa Electric Company on Tampa Bay. And some of them here, there's manatee viewing, so you can actually go and see where manatees are, which is really wonderful. One of the big sites run by Florida Power and Light in Riviera Beach has a viewing area as well as an education center. Next arrow, please. But again, mothers and their babies come back to this. So this was an article that came out in National Geographic in August that says manatees are addicted to power plants. What do we do now? And so that's what we are really working on with the service. Hey, what are we going to do? How are we going to give them stepping stones when these power plants go offline? So Florida Power and Light has agreed to net zero by 2040, I believe. And because where some of these plants are, as sea level rise potentially happens on the east coast of Florida, that could also take portions of the power plants offline. Next arrow, please. And again, this is one of the manatee viewing features where you can go to the power plant, see them all congregating, see the mothers and their babies coming back to the plant, but this is the industrial warm water sites, not what you would typically see in most springs to this level, with the exception probably of Volusia Blue in terms of how many animals are really coming together and hanging out and staying warm. Next slide, please. So why is it necessary to say where manatees are and designate critical habitat based on the physical and biological features? Well, it's because they move around so much. There's really 4 units in the state of Florida, and not all of them act the same. So we have Northwest Florida population, Southwest. Those have done really well, especially because of that power plant on Tampa Bay. Atlantic and Upper St. Johns River, so what flows from the Harris chain of lakes, really close to us, through Palatka in Putnam County, up into Duval County, up the Upper St. Johns River, and out into the Atlantic Ocean. That population has not done well because of that lack of submerged aquatic vegetation. There's no food. It's essentially been a food desert there, unfortunately. So what we're really working on, next slide, please, is asking the service to look at connectivity. How do manatees move? They have said that manatees only go 30 kilometers between warm water and food. You know, we'll drive more than 30 kilometers, go to Publix if they have a BOGO sale. You know, there can be motivation to go further under the right conditions. So what we're really asking for is connectivity, dam barrier removal, and that piece, the distance between forage and warm water. So this is a great start, and we're advocating for additional lands because we know Florida's going to change. We know that there's going to be further alteration of the coast, and maybe that's okay, but how do we really look at, and these are manatees in the Everglades here congregating, you know, and we've put a lot of resources into restoring the Everglades, but what other parts of Florida besides the Everglades do manatees need? Is it Silver Springs? I would argue yes. Is it Silver Glen Springs or Juniper Spring Run or these inland springs that have plenty of adequate forage that are really close to us right here in Gainesville? True, beautiful, natural treasures. We have the most artesian springs of any place in the world in Florida. And it really creates a unique ecosystem, not only for manatees, but many, many other species. So I could go on and on and on about wildlife, any species, if you give me the opportunity. So it's like the big hook has to come and pull me away, pull me across the stage. But if you have any questions about what we do at Defenders or what you can do for manatees, please feel free to reach out. We do have an active campaign where you can sign just asking the service to please expand designations to look at connectivity, not to treat each of these areas as completely distinct and unconnected, because we know that manatees move. That would be of great help. Next slide, please. And that's our information, defenders.org. If you are curious, happy to chat with anyone in much more detail about the Endangered Species Act and what critical habitat designations do. And then there's just a little bit of information here if you'd like to reach out and contact me. Next slide. And I really appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you all. It's a great opportunity to talk about wildlife, to talk about our ecosystems, to talk about Florida. And I hope to see you all again in the very near future.
Thank you so much. Other than humans, who are the natural predators of the manatee?
Yeah, there's not a huge number of predators. They will have encounters with sharks, especially along the Atlantic coast, but human disturbance, still boat strikes are the #1 cause of manatee mortality and has been that way for decades upon decades. Yes. I heard Puerto Rico. Okay, worldwide. Yeah, so the West Indian manatee, there's 2 subspecies, the Antillean manatee, which is the Puerto Rican population, and the critical habitat designation. There's never been a time the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has looked at Puerto Rico and designated where manatees need to live. That is part of this September 24th designation. So there are thousands of manatees there. West Indian manatees, the other subspecies is the Florida manatee. Every once in a while, they'll go to the Bahamas, they'll go to the Caribbean, but typically they're in Florida. There's also an African manatee species that lives in much of coastal Africa. And then there's another manatee species that went extinct that was previously in the Bering Sea. But the West Indian manatee, the Florida manatee is a subspecies.
Well, thank you, Dr. Sayler. If you stay up here with me for just one more second, I'd like to present you with this certificate. We're making a donation in your name to the Child Center for Early Learning. Thank you very much. Appreciate you being here. Okay, reminder, next week's program is the international auction, so make sure you bring your pocketbook. The quote of the week, gratitude makes sense of our past, brings peace for today, and creates a vision for tomorrow. That's Melody Beatty. The Rotary Reading Safari number is 585. 585. And with that, the meeting is adjourned.